this is Art 300, assignment number 6. It's a value scale on ball. So this class begins the most important part of your training this semester. We're learning to do what's called gradation. How do we make an imaginary three-dimensional object on a flat space? So this lesson is the beginning to teach you those skills, the beginning for your opportunity to practice those skills, and a few rules according to how our brains look at things that we must abide by. One of the first things is the shadow. And all these drawings, these are student drawings, you'll see that the shadow is not the darkest part of the drawing. In a classroom, I would be there, and there would be students making really black shadows, and so I want to talk to you about that. We're really dealing with our brain. Remember that many of the visual skills in your brain are related to your survival, and there are fears that are inherent in being a human being, and many other animals, all animals have a set of desires and fears, and our fears are related to danger. A black hole is dangerous. You can fall into it. There could be a cougar in it. I saw a pretty big tail up a tree recently in my yard, and what was that? So if you were some ancient peoples walking along a landscape, going to get water, wherever you're going, and all of a sudden you saw this great big hole, there was a mound or a little slope, and you saw a big hole in it, and it was pitch black in there. Would the whole group of people go, yay, let's go in there right now, and we can have a picnic in there? So you're dealing with, they are not going to go in there because they know better. They're afraid because who knows what's in there? It could be an entrance, and then you go in and there's a hole that goes down 200 feet. You don't know. So your basic instincts are God-given instincts. It's for your survival, thank goodness. And one of them is we don't like dark holes. So if you put a big black dark shadow in your drawing, the viewer is going to feel uncomfortable. Now that might be a subconscious feeling because they're not going to think there's a cougar in your shadow, but their subconscious mind may have that reaction. Plus, when we're drawing in black and white, or really anything up close, has greater detail. So up close you can see my eyelashes and a few of my eyebrow hairs that are left. And if I was far away, if I was a half a mile away, you might see me standing, this little figure on a road a half a mile away. But you wouldn't be able to see my eyelashes, eyebrows, etc. So what does it mean in a drawing when we have high detail or high contrast? It means it's close. Close is perhaps dangerous, but in a visual field and an imaginary scene, high contrast should be at the front, the closest part to the viewer, not in the background, not in the distance. So A, shadows should never be black. They can be a little darker underneath the object and then come out and get lighter. want to talk briefly about symmetry. We're extremely good at symmetry. They can prove it by putting 4-month-old babies in front of video screens in a little chair, and they're looking up at a video screen, and they're flashing faces on there, and that infant's eyes will stay longer on an image of a face that falls within certain symmetrical proportions. So it's not beauty, appreciating beauty is not learned, it's not prejudicial. It doesn't matter what race those faces are or what culture, where they came from, what color they are. It has to do with certain symmetries in the face, and we find that pleasing inside. As one of my artist friends said, it makes our brain feel good. So when we go to a museum and see beauty, or we go up to a lake and we picnic at the lake and we see beauty, how that makes us feel, we're hardwired for that. So we work with that. When we're artists, we have a story to tell, we want to tell it eloquently, we want to be the Shakespeare of our artwork, so our story is talking. Now that's going to come through whether or not you have intention to do that, because your art is a voice. Okay, so this is an assignment where we're making a value scale. Your assignment tells you to draw a 1-inch wide by 11-inch long box and divide it up so that you have 11 boxes. The white box can remain white. The black can be, as dark as you can get with your pencil. And then you want to gradually move across from light to dark. Now, many times, as is true in this one, there are sets of boxes that are exactly the same. If you see that on yours, just drop down another box and try to make one a little bit lighter than the other one. So after you do that, then we're going to start learning to draw the ball. How to use our pencils, how to use our stump. So how do we make a drawing interesting? We have contrast at edges. Contrast at edges is what makes something appear to come forward in space and look three-dimensional. Remember, this is the main skill that the state wants you to learn in this beginning drawing and composition class. So, contrasted edges. How do we see a three-dimensional object? How does the light fall on the object? If I'm out, well, you can see right here in my studio, I have a window over here. So there's more light here and here. It comes here. My nose is blocking it. Got another window over here. It's not as bright. So you can see a little bit of shadow down the center of my nose, but then a little bit more light here and here. We see objects by how the light falls on them. The part of the object that gets the most light will be the brightest. And then as the object blocks the light, it will get darker and darker and darker. Something we like to do in art is throw light up underneath an object. Again, we get contrast, and that'll make it look more 3D. You can't use the same values with a shadow and the ball. Okay, next part is no lines. We trace lightly our object, which is a ball. I set around 3.5. I looked around my studio and I found this can, and it's just about exactly right. So I just placed it down here. Oops. And traced it lightly. Bristol is a very smooth paper. Use the smoothest side. Even a smooth Bristol pad, one side will be smoother. Sometimes it's not even the top side, it's the back side. So that's the side I would like you to use. I've drawn my value scale here. I have traced a circle. Now, as I've said before, symmetry is critical. So if when you're drawing the ball, you get outside the lines or you lose the roundness or symmetry, go ahead and correct it. You can actually take your eraser and go right up if you've come over, or you can do it by hand. Thing is, you don't want to get too far out of symmetry before you correct it, because then it's going to throw everything else off in your drawing. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is what kind of lines or what kind of marks do we make if we are doing gradation. In other words, we're going from a light value to a dark value. The more gradually you make that transition, the slower you make that transition, the more even you make that transition, the more three-dimensional the object will look. So it's really important that we learn the best way to do that. So here is the technique that I use. I'm making small ovals. With the side of my pencil. That's about a 1/2 inch or 3/8. And from that original one, I'm going to move out. And I'm going to move out in all directions. I'm not going in a line. So I'm laying down graphite. Bristol is chosen because you can move graphite, you can remove graphite, you can add graphite to your drawing very easily, as long as you're not pressing too hard. And when you trace anything or use a line, be very careful not to press too hard, because you'll make an indentation in the paper and then you won't be able to shade over it. Okay, so you saw the motion of my hand. I was making ovals and coming out. That's the original one. It's a little darker than the rest, right there. So now what do we do? What's the use of the stump? Okay, the stump is not made to take a value and move it and try to make a lighter value. So what happens is, can't even see that, can you? Oh, where is it? There it is. What happens is, that is a smeary mark, and it has lines in it and overlapping. And anything smeary like that actually makes you feel sick to your stomach when you look at it, believe it or not. There are visual parts of your brain that are close to the gustatory section of your brain. So how do we use the stump? Okay. If you notice and watch my hand, I'll be using, actually, let's tape off part of that so you can see the difference between the surface and what we can do with the surface with the stump compared to not with the stump. So I'm just going to go on this side, and again, I'm going to make the soft circles. I am not pressing. I never use the tip. I'm using the long part of the side. You should hear a slight hissing sound because you're just skating across the surface of what is there. I'm not going past it unless I'm doing it accidentally. Again, it's the rounded motion. And I want to show you the difference. The stump will take the graphite and even it out over the surface. Even though it's a smooth surface, it still needs to have, okay, so that's the part where I use my stump. Oh, that took some of the graphite off. But you can see the difference. It takes the graphite and blends it. Looks darker. Here's the same graphite. and smoother, and you can see how smooth you could get transitions. You can go into that with erasers. You can remove parts of it because this is Bristol and because I haven't pressed hard. I can get down and put highlights in. I can blend with my eraser as well. It's not quite as controllable, but you can go in and out of the drawing, and that's really what I want you to know about it. Okay, so there's a misconception in art that an artist sits down, starts at one corner of the drawing, and progresses and knows exactly what they're doing at any given time. That's false. Drawing takes place, or art takes place, visual balance takes place in your right brain primarily. That is a spatial area, not linear, doesn't have math, doesn't have language. And so you want to move around. If you're feeling uncomfortable or afraid, that's normal. I feel uncomfortable when I get to areas that are more difficult. And so I tend to start maybe with a little bit of a shadow and then maybe jump up here. I think I'm afraid of getting the perfect blending up here, but remember, it's interactive and your brain's gonna kick in. And never underestimate the power of just something accidental and wonderful occurring. So my pencil has a kind of a rough lead. So if we look at how light falls on an object, on the ball, the light is coming the direction of the arrow, so the shadow is going to be opposite. It's an elliptical shape because that is what happens to a circle when it's tipped or stretched, and the light is stretching it. It's coming at an angle, making it longer. An ellipse is always symmetrical, longitude and latitude. You can fold it, you can cut one out of paper if you really need to. And that's all I did, was I just folded a piece of paper and then cut out a paper doll. And then when I opened it, if it wasn't what I wanted, I just folded it back and cut it again. I could trace it if I really wanted to. So what happens is, we get our, what I call hot highlight. That should be the paper color. Then it goes gradually down through the values till we get really to the what's called the core of the shadow, the darkest part. And then we have some reflected light at the bottom, and that serves to really pop this one's better. Reflected light serves to pop the bottom forward and then makes it look more three-dimensional. Now up here, if we have a pure white highlight, I think I'm going to lighten that one a little bit, the edge. How do we do that without an outline? Remember, don't want outlines. Outlines are left brain territory. So how do we show a highlighted edge? Well, just like it's shown here, we have the background come up to that highlight. And this would be extended some more out. Now, when you're working with symmetrical objects, you're going to need to constantly correct. So I'm putting some graphite behind that highlight so that we can see the object as three-dimensional without an outline. I can blend that. I can adjust values. I can go in, I can change it. Now say I wanted to make the transition between the highlight and the next shadow a little bit more gradual than that. That's where your white rubber eraser comes in, and it's not quite as controllable as the stump, but it will remove pigment and then you can play with it. So I'm just going to go in here with the side bottom. I'm not pointing or pushing. I'm kind of sliding it, maybe at a 45, maybe flatter than that. And I'm making circular motions again. And I'll see if I can maybe make a more gradual transition there. I may not be able to, depending on the student who created the drawing. How hard they pushed is what I'm talking about. So now I've got a little bit of transition here. I would go back and work on that a little bit. But you can see that it didn't take me more than a minute or so, and that I did it once the pigment was on there. So don't feel like in your drawing that if you do something like you've signed your death certificate or something, it's changeable. That's why we use Bristol. As long as you're not pressing hard, you can remove, put down, remove, put down, especially when we get into still lifes where there's multiple objects. So I'm working on this one. I think I have a fear of going up to the highlight, but I'm gonna jump around. So I noticed that in my drawings, when I'm doing more complex drawings, I will jump around a lot. And I don't know if it's fear, boredom, all of the above. Again, you notice my pencil's moving certain direction. Now this value is getting kind of close to this one. I'm going to have to be careful there. I don't want that. I want to have a really clean, crisp barrier and contrast there. Make it a little darker there and then maybe a little bit lighter on the ball. So it's the contrasted edges that makes your drawing more interesting. So it gives the viewer more to look at. It creates a better illusion of space. So I put some value here. I'm gonna blend it. And I do have an outline now, but that will either be incorporated or I'll remove it. So there's no outlines at the end of my drawing this ball. So I've gone past my, where I put the graphite and it's looking kind of smeary. So I'm gonna remove that part. Now it's, you know, that's not gradual enough transition. I was just removing smeary. So I'm gonna go back in on that. I think I need to make the core of the shadow a little bit darker. I can feel myself avoiding the highlight at the top. So I'm gonna push myself to go up that way. And allow yourself to jump around and not feel like, so I know I have to come back down here and I just don't feel like doing it right now, but I'll come back to it. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna blend this because otherwise I won't be able to really see the color of the value I have there. I'm gonna erase some marks I've made outside and correct. Now I'm going to blend with the stump. You can see it before, you can see my pencil marks. And again, I'm skating it. You should hear a soft hissing sound. I'm using circular motions, can you see? And I need probably to go in and use my eraser. So I'm moving up towards that highlight. I'm going to continue to do that. Now I'm getting nervous. Remember, an artist must always risk to go forward. You have to be willing to risk, because that's where really all new ideas come from. Okay, I'm close up there and I know those values aren't going to be exactly right, so I need to blend them, and then I'm going to maybe use my eraser. I've got some unevenness that I'm going to have to deal with to remove and put back. Okay, I'm not taking graphite up from these areas up. In other words, I'm not ever using the stump to pull. So right now I'm going to go back in with my eraser. And again, I'm using it kind of on the side. I'm going to see what I can do, if I can play with those transitions. Remember, you can work in and out of these, go back, as long as you're not pressing too hard. Everything is removable. That's getting a little bit better. It's still a little bit too dark. In a hot highlight, I would really like to see your paper. I need to take some more of that off. So I need to play up there. You can see now it's a little bit too harsh at that edge where the light value goes in. So I need to play with that. I need to play with my stump. I need to play with my eraser. I'm going to need to put a background here like I showed you here. Oops, it was sideways. Behind the highlight, we need something to contrast with that line. So a value scale from white to black, see if you can do it. And your ball drawing, including an elliptical shadow. If you have any questions, you can reach me via email. Also, don't forget, you can always Google images and put in pencil drawing of a ball, and you'll get some wonderful examples. Everybody's in the classroom will look different. Yours is yours, and you will speak in a gentle voice or a loud, happy voice, or all different voices, and our voices change too. So that's your assignment number 6, Art 300.